Breaking. King Charles has just summoned the Prime Minister to an emergency audience that broke 70 years of royal protocol. Keir Starmer arrived at Buckingham Palace at 11:47 p.m. last night, looking absolutely shattered. What was discussed officially, nobody knows, but what leaked 2 hours later could destroy the government forever. Palace insiders described the meeting as the most explosive confrontation between the Crown and a Prime Minister since the abdication crisis. And what happened next has Westminster in complete meltdown. If you want to see how this constitutional earthquake ends, hit that subscribe button right now because the next 72 hours will decide Britain's future. Here's what sparked this midnight crisis. 3 days ago, Starmer addressed Parliament about his new immigration reforms. His message was defiant. Britain would process asylum claims in 6 months, resettle 50,000 refugees annually, and ignore public backlash. But King Charles wasn't having it. The monarch, who spent decades championing tradition, watched Starmer's speech from Windsor Castle, and something inside him snapped. At 9:15 p.m. yesterday, the Prime Minister's phone rang. Private Secretary Sir Clive delivered a message no modern PM has ever received. His Majesty requires your immediate presence at Buckingham Palace tonight. This is not optional. Starmer's advisors were stunned. Emergency audiences happen during wars, terror attacks, or royal deaths, not policy disagreements. But Charles wasn't asking, he was commanding. Within 90 minutes, Starmer's motorcade pulled through the palace gates under cover of darkness. No cameras, no press, no witnesses, just the king and his prime minister alone in the 1844 room, for what sources describe as the most brutal dressing down in modern British history. What makes this even more explosive is what Starmer reportedly brought with him. According to a palace staff member who spoke to the Telegraph on condition of anonymity, Starmer carried a folder marked Constitutional Reform Proposals. Inside were draft plans to strip the monarchy of ceremonial powers, reduce civil list funding by 40%, and transfer royal patronages to elected officials. The source claims Charles saw the folder's title and his face went white. "You brought these here to my home," the king allegedly said. That was when the real confrontation began. For the next hour and 43 minutes, witnesses outside the room could hear raised voices, something absolutely unprecedented in modern royal protocol. One footman, who had served the palace for 28 years, told The Sun he had never heard anything like it. The walls of Buckingham Palace are thick, built to keep royal business private. But that night, anger penetrated stone. While Starmer faced royal fury at midnight, British veterans who served their country with honour were sleeping in doorways across London. Thomas Mitchell, a 71-year-old Falklands veteran, was found last Tuesday morning frozen to death behind a Tesco in Brixham. He had written to his MP 17 times begging for housing support. 17 letters, 0 responses. He died clutching his service medals. A man who risked everything for Britain was abandoned by the very government sworn to protect him. His daughter, Sarah Mitchell, gave an interview to ITV that has been viewed 8.3 million times. Tears streaming down her face, she said, "My father survived Argentine bullets, but couldn't survive British bureaucracy. He fought for this country, and this country let him die in a car park." The clip is breaking hearts across the nation. Pensioners are sharing it. Working families are sharing it. Even young people who barely know about the Falklands War are sharing it, because the injustice is so obvious, so cruel, so unbearable. Meanwhile, asylum seekers arriving by boat receive immediate housing in 4-star hotels, with full English breakfasts, Wi-Fi, spending money, and medical care that British pensioners wait months to access. The Daily Mail revealed last week that the government spent £8 million housing 200 migrants in a Kent seaside hotel, £40,000 per person, while veterans die on the streets. Documents obtained through Freedom of Information requests show that 73 hotels across Britain are now full-time migrant accommodation centres. These aren't hostels or temporary shelters. They are seaside resorts, city centre hotels, and countryside inns with gyms, restaurants, and entertainment facilities. The Grosvenor Hotel in Torquay charges £145 per night. Normally, the government pays £127 per night per room for migrant families. Do the math. While British families struggle to afford a weekend getaway, migrants get indefinite stays at taxpayer expense. Meanwhile, elderly British citizens who paid taxes their entire lives are rationing heating, choosing between eating and staying warm, and dying alone in freezing council flats. The contrast is so obscene, so morally bankrupt, that even lifelong Labour supporters are turning against Starmer. Margaret Parsons, a retired nurse from Durham, who voted Labour for 45 years, told ITV, I can't support a party that treats foreigners better than our heroes. Then something unprecedented happened. King Charles, who spent his entire life carefully avoiding political controversy, shattered every rule his mother lived by. At that midnight meeting, sources inside the palace say Charles didn't just express concern, he delivered an ultimatum. According to 3 separate palace officials who spoke to the Times on condition of anonymity, Charles told Starmer, "You are destroying the social fabric that holds this nation together. The British people feel betrayed. I feel betrayed. If you continue down this path, you will force me to consider options no modern monarch has ever used." The word options sent chills through everyone who heard it, because buried in British constitutional law are ancient powers. The Crown technically still possesses the power to dismiss a government, dissolve Parliament, or refuse royal assent to legislation. Powers that exist on paper but haven't been invoked in over 300 years. Was Charles actually threatening to remove Starmer from office? Constitutional scholars are now debating it. Professor David Blackwell of Cambridge told BBC Newsnight, "The royal prerogative to dismiss a Prime Minister technically exists. It's never been formally abolished. If Charles believes Starmer has lost the confidence of the people and is governing against their interests, constitutional precedent from 1834 suggests he could act." That was the last time a British monarch dismissed a sitting government. King William IV removed Prime Minister Lord Melbourne, triggering a crisis that reshaped British democracy. Could history repeat itself 191 years later? Palace insiders confirmed the king was absolutely furious, speaking with an intensity they had never witnessed before. One aide described it as a father confronting a son who had betrayed the family. Another said Charles referenced his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, 3 times during the meeting, saying, "She warned me this day might come, and she knew maintaining the balance was everything." Starmer, witnesses say, sat frozen and pale, unable to respond. When he finally left the palace at 1:30 a.m, photographers captured him staring straight ahead with hollow eyes. The fallout was immediate. Within 6 hours, the story leaked to The Telegraph, then The Sun, and by mid-morning, every major outlet was running it. Financial markets panicked. The pound fell 2.3% against the dollar, wiping £18 billion from Britain's value in a single day. The FTSE 100 crashed 4.1%, the worst drop since the pandemic. Pension funds lost £4.7 billion. Inside Labour, resignations followed. Protests erupted across the country, and polls showed a historic collapse. Even among Labour voters, a majority sided with the King over their own Prime Minister. Now Britain stands on the brink. A no-confidence vote looms. Markets are shaken, allies are alarmed, and the monarchy has openly confronted the government. The next 7 days could determine Britain's future for decades. So here's the question that matters. Did Starmer destroy his own government by taking on the King? Or can he somehow survive the biggest political crisis in modern British history? And could Nigel Farage actually win the next election? What do you think happens next? Social media remains a wildfire. Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, every platform has become a battlefield. Hashtags like #DefendTheKing and #StarmerOut were trending globally within minutes, reaching millions of posts. TikTok videos showing British veterans telling their stories of homelessness and neglect have amassed over 60 million views combined. Polls paint a devastating picture. YouGov reported that 71% of Britons believed Charles was right to confront Starmer. Even among Labour voters, 53% sided with the King. Ipsos polling revealed that only 19% of Britons trust Starmer to lead the country, down from 47% 2 weeks ago, with a net approval rating of -42, the lowest for any Prime Minister in modern history. Focus groups in Labour strongholds such as Manchester, Liverpool and Newcastle show working-class voters abandoning the party in record numbers. One respondent in Newcastle said, "If the King thinks Starmer has gone too far, then Starmer has gone too far." Simple as that. Street protests erupted across 15 British cities. In London, over 80,000 people marched from Trafalgar Square to Parliament Square, chanting, "God save the King, sack the PM." In Birmingham, protesters burned effigies of Starmer outside the town hall. In Edinburgh, Scottish nationalists and unionists, who normally despise each other, marched together against Labour's immigration policies. In Cardiff, protesters shut down the city centre for 6 hours. In Manchester, home to Labour's traditional heartland, 15,000 people gathered outside the town hall demanding Starmer's resignation. These were ordinary British citizens, nurses, teachers, factory workers, many of whom had voted Labour their entire lives, now holding signs saying, "You've lost us and the King speaks for Britain." This was not just political opposition, It was a nation in revolt. Inside number 10 Downing Street, the atmosphere descended into absolute chaos. Ministers were screaming at each other in corridors. Emergency meetings were held every hour but accomplished nothing. And civil servants openly questioned whether orders from the Prime Minister's office had any legitimacy. One Whitehall insider told Politico, "The machinery of government has ground to a halt. Nobody knows who's in charge anymore." Senior Labour MP Wes Streeting was allegedly overheard shouting at the Prime Minister, "You've destroyed us, 40 years of rebuilding this party, and you've destroyed it in 48 hours. Deputy Chief Whip Rosie Winterton was seen leaving Downing Street at 11 p.m, crying, telling colleagues she couldn't do this anymore. WhatsApp groups that started as policy discussion forums have become digital war rooms plotting Starmer's removal. One group, New Direction, includes 47 Labour MPs, including 5 cabinet members. Leaked messages show them openly discussing leadership challenges, vote timings, and successor candidates. Angela Rayner's name appears 23 times in those messages. One message reads, "Angela's ready, the party's ready, we just need the moment." She is no longer defending Starmer, she is planning her next move. Chancellor Rachel Reeves, normally Starmer's closest ally, has gone completely silent. Sources close to her campaign team say she is waiting for the perfect moment to strike, privately meeting with business leaders, union bosses, and senior MPs to build the coalition for her leadership bid. Shadow ministers from the opposition are gleefully watching Labour tear itself apart. Conservative MP Jacob Rees-Mogg told GB News, "Starmer has achieved something remarkable. He's united Britain against himself. Even Starmer's own base appears to be collapsing. The layer that could end this government entirely came from leaked documents. Treasury briefings from 3 weeks ago reveal senior Labour officials knew their immigration policies would provoke massive public backlash. They knew veterans groups were planning protests, and they knew the King had privately expressed deep concerns to the Cabinet Secretary. Internal emails show Home Secretary Yvette Cooper writing to Starmer, "The Palace has made its position clear. Proceeding will create a constitutional crisis." Starmer's response, according to the leaked emails, was, "The Crown doesn't set policy, we do." And yet the government went ahead, deliberately ignoring royal warnings. This shows the Prime Minister acting with arrogance and recklessness, knowingly defying the monarchy while the nation suffers. Meanwhile, Conservative leader Rishi Sunak filed a motion of no confidence in Starmer's government. It is scheduled to be voted on Monday, and some Labour MPs privately admit they might not block it. Some may even vote with the opposition. An unprecedented situation. Nigel Farage is holding emergency rallies across Britain with a message focused on patriotism and tradition. He declared, "While others attack our king, we defend him. While others forget British values, we remember them." His speeches invoke Churchill, the Blitz, and every moment Britain stood alone against darkness. Reform UK's polling surged from 18% to 27% in just 3 days, putting the party in second place nationally, ahead of Labour, within striking distance of the Conservatives. Membership applications and donations have flooded the party. Internationally, reactions have compounded Starmer's crisis. In Washington, State Department officials expressed concern over Britain's political stability. EU officials in Brussels are relieved Britain left the EU before this meltdown. French President Emmanuel Macron said Britain is discovering the price of abandoning experienced leadership. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau praised constitutional monarchy as essential to democracy, a subtle rebuke of Starmer. In Australia, opposition leader Peter Dutton called Starmer's confrontation with the King disgraceful, while New Zealand Prime Minister Christopher Luxon warned that Britain's crisis threatens democratic stability worldwide. Allies are sending a clear message. Starmer has isolated Britain internationally, while destabilising it domestically. The coming week will determine Britain's future. Monday brings the no-confidence vote. Tuesday, the King will deliver his first public address since the crisis began, likely referencing duty, tradition and national unity, subtly criticising Starmer's policies. Wednesday, Labour MPs will hold an emergency meeting to discuss removing their own leader. Thursday, the Bank of England will hold an emergency session to address the economic fallout. Friday, Reform UK will launch its formal election campaign to capitalise on Labour's collapse. This is not political theatre. This is real-time regime change. Britain is watching its government crumble, floor by floor, with Starmer cornered, desperate and abandoned by his party. The question remains, did Starmer destroy his government by confronting the King, or can he somehow survive the biggest political crisis in modern British history? Could Nigel Farage actually win the next election? The nation waits, holding its breath. By the end of this week, Britain could look entirely different. Starmer faces mounting pressure from every direction: his own party, the monarchy, the public, and international allies. The no-confidence vote, the King's unprecedented intervention, the economic fallout, and mass public protests have combined into a perfect storm that threatens to topple a government in record time. Meanwhile, Nigel Farage and Reform UK are poised to capitalise on the chaos, turning political instability into unprecedented opportunity. Ordinary citizens, veterans, and pensioners long ignored are now at the centre of a national reckoning, demanding accountability and justice. The coming days are critical. Every decision, every statement, and every leak could determine whether Starmer survives politically or is swept aside. The monarchy's subtle yet forceful assertion of authority, combined with the visible outrage of the public, has set the stage for a constitutional crisis the likes of which Britain has not seen in centuries. Parliament, the media, and social media are all converging to amplify the drama, leaving no room for mistakes. One misstep could accelerate the collapse of the government. One bold move could change the political landscape entirely. Britain is at a crossroads. The next 72 hours will define its leadership, its laws, and the trust of its people. Will the monarchy assert its power to preserve tradition? Or will the government push forward and risk permanent alienation from the public? Will Labour recover from internal rebellion, or will Farage's insurgent movement rise to dominance? Every eye is on Westminster, every citizen a witness as the nation grapples with the fallout of choices made at Buckingham Palace in the dead of night. History is unfolding in real time, and the consequences will echo for decades to come. This is not merely a story of politics. It is a story of accountability, power, and the very principles that hold a nation together. Britain is watching, the world is watching, and the outcome is far from certain. The question is no longer if the government will survive, but who will lead the country into its next chapter, and what legacy will remain after this unprecedented constitutional confrontation.